Good evening and welcome to Paranormal Lens. I'm Chad Thomas, your host tonight, with my co-host Jamie Widener. How are
You
you,
know,
Jamie?
wonderful dude. It's been a day, but you know what? It's over. So let's do some paranormal stuff. It always makes us feel better, right?
Yeah,
It makes it
yeah.
all go away.
So, hey, Jamie, do you know what you were doing a year ago today?
Planning to start this podcast.
No, actually, this would have been our first week, but you
Really?
were close. Yeah, actually, but we were pre-recording the first couple ones, so we were actually relaxing. I think it was April 3rd, but it was a year ago. So we've been at this a whole year.
Holy! I almost said a dirty word. Holy crap! That's amazing.
Uh-huh. And it's been a good year, I think.
Well,
You
yeah,
know.
it's been an adventurous year for sure.
Yep.
I've learned things I didn't know, both
Mhm.
my own research and what you've presented, and even David's. Early on. Um,
Uh-huh.
I found things that I want to do, like get to and be at,
Mhm.
locations. Um, I've, yeah, I think a lot of things have changed in a good way.
Mhm. We've met
Oh,
some great people along the way, like
great,
Kyle, who's on
super cool
tonight.
people. Yep. And there he is. That's not a plug or anything, but he is super cool. So those who
He
know,
is.
if you know,
So,
you know.
yep. And we'll be seeing him
Um,
in a couple weeks,
a couple
more
of weeks.
month
That's
out.
right. Oh
So,
my gosh, I'm excited for this too.
yeah.
Um, yeah, you're right. Wow, a year. Thank you.
Mhm.
I didn't even realize it.
Yep. So, and it's a busy week. Oh, and there's another person we met this year, or at least I met. So, yeah, which is
Yeah,
all
right.
Bert. Um, it's a busy week for me too. My dad turned 80 today, so
Yep.
just all sorts of celebrations. So,
Happy birthday, Ken.
yeah.
Shout out to Ken Thomas, the fathership, if you will.
So, but anyway, anything else you want to cover before we jump into Rockford, or you are primed and ready to learn about
Oof.
Rock?
What is there to say other than let's do it, right?
All right. Well, I'm gonna try something for an intro here. We'll see if it works. If not, if it fails, well, you know how that goes. So,
Yep.
all right. Lancaster, Pennsylvania has a deep and rich history, and we are lucky enough to still have some of that history preserved. One of those places is historic Rockford. Formerly known as the Rockford Plantation, I reached out to their team to see if there was anyone who could join us tonight, but coincidentally, our show tonight was on their opening day for the 2024 season. So they are all prepping for a busy weekend. They did send me some information, which is part of my research. Historic Rockford is surrounded by Lancaster County Central Park, but it is owned by the Rockford Foundation, a 501c3 organization. I mentioned earlier that we were lucky enough to have it preserved, but it wasn't luck that preserved Rockford. In the 1950s, the land was owned by the Lancaster County Area Refuse Authority. The mansion was slated to be demolished to make way for an incinerator and landfill. The Junior League of Lancaster purchased the mansion and surrounding land in 1957, and in 1958, the Rockford Foundation was created and the preservation began. In 1960, the house was opened to the public, and in 1964, the restoration of the wooden piazzas was completed. In 1976, it was listed on the National Registry of Historic Places, and in 2020, a project was completed that converted a Germanic bank barn on the property to an art museum. The name officially became Historic Rockford to reflect that they are comprised of the 1794 General Edward Hand Mansion and the John J. Snyder Jr. Gallery of Early Lancaster County Decorative Arts. That's a mouthful.
And you nailed it. If I
All right.
wasn't watching you, I would think that was a voiceover, like in the video.
Uh huh.
Perfect, dude. Really good.
So, thank you. I want to thank Ian A. Bentley for the use of the video. His website is listed on the event comments if anybody wants to check out his work, but I appreciate him letting us use that video. Um, so that's the recent history, but we want to dig into what might land this on a paranormal show, right?
Right.
The land that historic Rockford was built on and the surrounding area that is now part of the Lancaster County Central Park was occupied by the Native Americans from the Susquehannock tribe. Next slide, please. Close to the Rockford on Gulf Road is a burial mound from this tribe. In 1785, General Edward Hand made his first purchase of 160 acres of land about 2 miles southeast of Lancaster City on the banks of the Conestoga River. Next slide. Had retired from the Continental Army as a major general, having served under George Washington. He was a physician, a surgeon, horticulturist, and served in several capacities in the local, state, and federal governments. Hand was a 32nd degree Freemason. He was married to Catherine Ewing, and they had 8 children. Hand started a plantation on the 160 acres of land he had purchased. This plantation raised livestock, had orchards, and was also farmed for crops. And an interesting note, the word plantation at the time in Pennsylvania was a synonym for farm. Plantation has some other connotations as we get further into the 1800s, but this was just a farm at that point. In 1792, Hand purchased an additional 17 acres of land. It was at this time a mansion was planned and built for the family to reside in. The house was built in the Georgian style of architecture. The four floors of the home overlook each other with a central hallway and 4 corner rooms. This was a typical building process for the time period. Edward Kitty and his 7 surviving children moved into the home when it was completed in 1794. Anne passed away at the family home in 1802. His wife passed away there in 1805. When Hand died, he was in a great amount of debt and didn't have a will. His family was tasked with managing all of his affairs. This must have been very stressful for them. In 1807, his eldest son, John, was discovered dead from a gunshot wound on the 2nd floor of the mansion, having taken his own life. The estate was sold to cover his debts. On July 14th, 1810, the plantation was sold to William Montgomery for £5,000. That would have been just under $500,000 now. The property was run as a tenant farm for close to 150 years. Though falling into disrepair, the house had not been changed much through the years, and those dates pretty much line up with the recent history that I discussed earlier. There's not much recorded about what happened in those years. There's a few stories here and there, but that's sort of the gist of things, the history. It just became a farm that was rented out to people. Go ahead and jump to the next slide. When the house was being restored, it was decided to try and convey what it would look like in the day in the life of the Hand family. Paint colors were determined by doing detailed analysis of the surfaces in the home. Furniture was selected and arranged based on a detailed inventory taken after Hand's death in 1802. Next slide. There's a gown on display that is believed to have been owned by Catherine Hand herself. It had been passed down through generations of the family and was donated to the foundation in 2012. Next slide. So with all of this history, do you think there's a possibility of paranormal activity there? As I mentioned before, I reached out to the foundation to see if someone was willing to talk to me or come on the show. Nancy Bradley, the office manager, got back to me very quickly, saying, unfortunately, they are currently busy getting ready for the 2024 season. She also relayed, while the Board of Trustees does not take any position on Rockford being haunted, there have been many personal experiences collected here, some going back decades, if not centuries. That got my hopes up, thinking maybe we would have a great historic location in our backyard that we could investigate. Unfortunately, that does not appear to be the case. Nancy said, at this time, due to limited staffing availability, we are unable to conduct any paranormal investigations in the Hand Mansion. Since the mansion is decorated with artifacts that are delicate, sensitive historic nature, our Board of Trustees, which governs all aspects of our nonprofit organization, has a policy that requires the presence of several staff members to supervise investigations. And quite simply, we do not have those resources at the moment. If that, as disappointing as that is, I understand the situation they're in. If that ever changes, she will reach out to me and I will happily do research and investigate the property. Jerry, I'm not sure about the outside. It is in Lancaster County Central Park, and most of the parks around here are governed by at dawn or
one of the dusk rules. Yeah.
So I'm sure you could do some stuff outside during the day. I don't know if there's anything in place to keep that from happening, but definitely not inside at night or outside at night. So, hopefully that'll change at some point in the future. Maybe we need to get on the board there, Jamie, and change some rules. I don't know.
It takes one, it just takes one to start.
So well, or find more, or help them find more volunteers so they have people who can cover it.
That's the other point too.
So anyway, that being said, there are still resources available to find out about the spirits at historic Rockford. Nancy co-authored the pamphlet called The Haunted History of Rockford. She and her husband conduct haunted encounters, personal paranormal experiences at Rockford seasonally in October. So they do a paranormal haunted tour during the Halloween season, which I think we're going to have to go check out.
Of course. I'm surprised we don't have tickets for this already.
This will be the second year for this event. So let's dig into some of those stories. We're going to start on the third floor. It is believed that this floor was originally the floor where servants and house staff would have lived. It was turned into an apartment in the 1960s that was used by the caretaker and their family. In the 1970s, we have a report of one of those families saying it was typical for them to listen for voices before coming downstairs so they didn't interrupt a tour that was going through the house. One morning, the caretaker's wife was getting ready to bring the children downstairs, but stopped on the landing to see if she heard any voices. Upon hearing muffled voices and discussion, they retreated back up the stairs. She waited for a few minutes and then realized it was a Monday. The house wasn't open on Mondays, and there was nobody in the house. So she went downstairs to check to see if anybody had, come in, any staff, and there was nobody there. So that's the first interesting thing that they had going on. Another unexplainable thing happened while the caretaker was upstairs in the apartment. He had a guest arrive at the back door who heard voices on the other side of the door. Assuming that the caretaker was right there, the friend called out his name and knocked on the door, and the voices stopped, but the door didn't open. He knocked again, but the door remained closed. The guest finally rang the doorbell, which was connected upstairs to the apartment, and a few minutes later, the door was opened by the caretaker. When he asked, "Why didn't you open the door when I called out your name?" the caretaker said, "What are you talking about? I've been upstairs in the apartment the whole time waiting for you." So who was on the other side of the door? Another story from the third floor is of a law enforcement officer who rented the third floor apartment. Everybody thought it would be great to have another layer of security in place. The man moved in, but only after a few days he moved out saying this: the old place was getting to him. He refused to stay any more time and refused to say anything else about it.
Jerry, I know what you mean. We've all been there.
Yep. Let's go ahead and jump to the next slide. The foundation has many different events throughout the operating season, and some of those events are held at night with candlelight. At one of those events, a guest noticed a young girl in 18th century style clothing peering around the door, around the door frame of the blue parlor, watching a demonstration of dance that was going on in the hallway. The room is decorated with very formal furniture, and it would have been the room that the four family members who passed away in the house would have been visited by friends and family. After the demonstration, the guest decided to go meet the little girl and went into the room. To their surprise, the room was empty and the little girl was nowhere to be found. Next slide. At a Yuletide event, a mother and daughter were in General Hand's study listening to two docents when they noticed a man sitting in a dark corner of the room. The man was intently listening to the story that the guides were relaying to the guests. After the tour concluded, the mother approached an employee in the gift shop to ask about the man. The employee asked her to describe what she saw. She explained that in the dark corner, a tall, balding man with distinctive features had been sitting in a chair. The employee pulled a postcard with a portrait of General Hand from the rack, and the woman and her daughter both confirmed that this was the person that they had seen. Now, this was their first time to the property, so they didn't know what General Hand would have looked like. Another event recorded in the study was by one of the few teams that has been granted the privilege of investigating the mansion. Around 3 a.m., one of the team members and a foundation staff member were sitting quietly in the downstairs hallway. They were getting ready to wrap up for the night when they heard what sounded like wood scraping on wood. Everyone else was accounted for in the kitchen, so there should have been no one in the study. When the room was investigated, it was noted that the wooden bootjack had been removed closer to General Hand's chair. The position of everything had been carefully observed and documented before the investigation began. So what moved the bootjack is the question here. Remember the caretaker and family I mentioned from the 1970s? They had a young boy in the family that liked to explore the house when it was not open to the public. Probably shouldn't have been doing that, but, it was the 70s. His favorite room was the handboy's bedchamber. The three had presumably shared the room. One day, the young boy's mother heard him run back up to the apartment. Visibly disturbed, she asked him what had happened. He explained he had been playing in the boy's room when another boy appeared that he had never seen before, and it was clear that this boy didn't want him there. Go ahead and jump to the next slide. Moving from the boys' bedroom to the girls' bedroom, we find the story of an employee that was preparing the house for the day's tours. She had closed the night before and had checked to make sure that everything was in place so she could quickly open up the next morning. This including making sure the puzzle on the floor of the girls' room was partially put together. When she opened up the next morning and looked in the room, she found that the puzzle had been completed during the night. Another event noted in this bedroom was during a paranormal investigation in 2010. The team had been diligent about photographing the rooms and where everything was. One object in the room was a sewing basket that had a lid on it. At the beginning of the investigation, the basket was left with the lid on. When the team went to start investigating in that room, the lid was found sitting next to the basket. With this intriguing event, it was decided to put a video camera in the room pointing at the sewing basket, and it also covered the puzzle. The team went to investigate another part of the house, but heard voices from the second floor near the girls' room. When they shone a flashlight in the room, they discovered that the camera had been turned. Upon reviewing the footage, they watched the camera turn even though there was no one on the second floor at that time. Let's go to the next slide. Moving on to the master bedroom, again at a Yuletide tour. The tour guide was stationed in the room, and it was her job to explain the clothing and accessories on display. She would go through the items, show what they did, how they were used, and then reset them between tours. One of those items included a fan. She demonstrated how to use it and then placed it on the chair next to the tea table. When she went to prepare for the next tour, she couldn't locate the fan. She checked the bed to see if maybe she had laid it there instead, but it wasn't there. She went through and checked the whole room and couldn't find it. Out of exasperation, she blurted out, "This is not funny. I need that back." So she kept searching the room, went back to the tea table and the chair, and the fan was sitting on the chair where she had left it originally, but it hadn't been there when her first search. Just all sorts of inexplicable things.
Yep. Wow.
Let's go to the next slide, Jamie. Now, this is that dress that we had seen earlier, but the room that it's in is what's called the unrestored room. When the foundation started restoring the house, they found that with all the tenants that had been through the house, this room was left almost untouched since the family left in 1810. Most other rooms had layers of wallpaper, but this room still had the original paint and on the walls and trim. What is the reason for this? Was there something protecting this room? Now, I pulled some quotes from the booklet that I talked about, Haunted History at Rockford. A few years ago, a gentleman visited Rockford on a tour and announced that he had spent several weeks staying at this house as a boy during the summer of 1947. His family had been good friends with the tenant farmer family who was living there at the time, and his summer visit was arranged. In discussing his memories of Rockford, he explained to the director that no family member used this room and that all made a point of avoiding it since this was the room where the general's son had killed himself. Now, this conflicts with another report about John Hand's death, In the newspaper that it was said it was in the downstairs parlor, but we're not sure. So we may never know the truth as to which room it was, but strange things happened in this unrestored room. These reports include rapping noises, strange EMF readings that do not happen in other rooms. Sensitives feel sick and others feel uneasy or restless. Others have been touched, some have been punched in the stomach, others tapped on the shoulder. While most of these things people may consider a little dark or scary, not everything that happens in this room is. Here's another excerpt from the booklet. Several years ago, a staff member was working on a display of archaeological objects in the unrestored room. She had removed the items from a table and was ironing a new tablecloth. The staff member had prepared new identification cards for the display and placed them on top of the empty table. As she worked, she reported having the distinct and persistent feeling that a shadowy figure was standing in the doorway. Each time she looked over, however, no one was there. When she finished ironing the tablecloth, she turned around to place it on the table, and she immediately saw that the new display cards had been that she had stacked neatly on top of the table were no longer there, but rather stacked neatly on the floor beneath the table. When the staff member was finished with her task, she returned to the museum office and reported the incident to the director. She laughed and concluded, "Whatever this is, it was trying to convince me that it was standing in the doorway when in fact it was playing a trick on me and behind my back." On one of the paranormal investigations that happened, an audio recorder was left running in this unfinished room. While the room was empty, the distinct sound of someone pacing in boots was recorded. So that room is very intriguing. I definitely want to visit it and see. I just want to see some of these rooms.
Right. We got tour.
What's that?
I think we have to go tour.
Yeah. Go ahead and go to the next slide. The kitchen is going to be the last room we talk about. It is the lowest level of the house. A recorder was left running here during an investigation as well. When analyzed, the recording had two interesting captures. The first was what sounded like a muted conversation between two people. One thing that was distinguishable was the name Frank. Frank was the name of one of the enslaved people that the Hand family had. He escaped in 1802. The second capture was of a male voice singing, "I am so sad and lonely." People have been known to smell things in the basement kitchen. Tobacco is one of the things that is commonly noticed, but there's at least one occasion where a group of people smelled apple pies being baked. In the hallway outside the kitchen is the gift shop area. In this area, a guest was struck by a battery-operated candle that was on a shelf that came flying off. During one of those investigations, a camera was placed inside the kitchen facing the door, and a camera was on the other side of the door covering the hallway leading up to the door. In reviewing the film, they found the heavy wooden door leading from the hallway to the kitchen jerks open suddenly and then closes. No shadows were detected beneath the door, and the camera in the hallway corroborated that no team member was present in this area at the time. Here's one last excerpt from the book. Volunteers have also reported having strange experiences in the area of the kitchen. Shortly after a Revolutionary War encampment at Rockford, a volunteer was alone in the museum shop processing credit card receipts at the cash register. Since it was after hours, only one light was lit and the rest of the room was in relative darkness. The volunteer entered a credit card number into the machine, and as she waited for the receipt to print, she glanced down the length of the dimly lit room. As she watched, a mist formed in front of the door leading to a staff-only area. She described the mist as being about as tall as a person and said it shimmered in place for a few seconds. As suddenly as it appeared, it disappeared in a whoosh, as if they had been whisked through the doorway. At home later that evening, the volunteer related her experiences to her husband. He was also a museum volunteer, but was employed as a police officer. He listened to her story with interest and then told her that he had a similar experience in the exact same area of the mansion. One day, he explained, as he walked through the museum shop and approached the kitchen door, he watched the transparent figure of a woman dressed in 18th century garb run down the hall from the steps toward the kitchen door and disappear through the closed door. Now, these are the majority of the stories that I was able to locate, but there are also many tales of people feeling like they aren't alone, someone rushing by them, or being gently touched. I'm curious to see if we were able to poll some of the tour guests, how many of them have experienced something paranormal. So, Jamie, what do you think?
Well, I think that the history alone and the extended history of this, it's been in a residential property and in a working farm for ever,
Mhm.
leads to the probability. And there's enough reported. These are all anecdotal stories, right? There's no
Mhm.
and whatever the paranormal teams, if they have hard evidence, then we just don't see it or have it. So
Right.
I'm going to take it as anecdotal. And once is a coincidence, twice is a pattern, kind of
Mhm.
thing.
Yep.
There's more than one occurrence of each of these situations where something has gone on, and the movement of items really intrigues me. That's poltergeist activity. So that
Right.
we've experienced that in some places as well, and it's a little off-putting, right? When something
It's cool
something
though. It's cool.
oh, it's super freaking cool, but it's
Uh-huh.
really at first you're like, what is it? What's going? It's beyond you, right?
Right.
It takes a moment to process. Um,
Mhm.
exactly what you're experiencing, but then you're like, there's two kinds of people, right? The ones that are freaked out and run, and the ones who are like, do it again.
Right. Right.
I tend to
Exactly.
be able to do it again part. Um, but that kind of stuff is unusual,
Mhm.
and um, it bears to want me to know more and see more of this or experience this. So it's a shame that obviously I get the volunteer piece.
Mhm.
It's not unusual.
Yep.
Being a former nonprofit person, I relied heavily on volunteer support to get a lot of things done. And when there are many, many hands to make light work. But when there are few, things get heavy. And things have to give. So
Right.
this is one of those, and the timing and the hours of the day that we're there, the overnight process of it or into the night process, it doesn't bode well for extra help. So
Nope.
I get it. Um, I wonder if there's a way we can volunteer. But yeah, I think there has to be something going on here,
Mhm.
and it's an age old place. I've been by it so many times, and I've never had the opportunity to really stop. I used to have a very early Sunday morning softball league in the park, and by noon or 1 o'clock when I was done, I had to go home and get other things done. It's a Sunday, so you got other things to do, and I could have
Yep.
stopped easily through many years of being out there. But and Central Park, Lancaster County Central Park, is such a beautiful place as well. And I've
Right.
been there for hiking and biking and other things. Um, but it's just one of those places we all know where it is. Anybody
Right.
from around this area knows what it is.
Mhm.
It's just I haven't had a chance to get there, and now
Yeah.
I'm rather disappointed with myself.
Well, I'm just glad that the junior league of Lancaster had the foresight to save this property. I'm not
Yeah,
sure if you aware, but part of Lancaster County Central Park has a landfill under it.
it does. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's well.
Um,
Speaking of those softball games, some of those fields are built over the former landfill, and sadly, some of the outfields have sinkholes in them. So you play at your risk, kind of thing.
mhm.
And then I think old fields 3 and 4 are now off limits because of that sinkhole
Okay.
concept. They moved the fields elsewhere, at least to other fields. The league part of it, they moved away. Um, it's really, that goes to show too. Here we have a park with trees and all the stuff. The accoutrements that all parks have.
Mhm.
Activity wise, and it's a landfill.
Right.
So things can come back,
Yep.
which is really really cool for foresight.
Yep.
There's a couple
Um,
of comments here I want to pull up quick.
okay.
Well, first of all, yeah, Amanda, I agree. Those are super cool stories, and thankfully, Nancy, is that her name?
Yeah.
Uh, thanks, Nancy, for documenting these things. You and your husband, and the efforts you're doing to retain these stories, because it adds to the mystique
Mhm.
and the mystery of a place, and it does bring people to you, even though they, like I want to go, and I can't investigate. I mean, at least I know
Right.
I don't think I can.
Right.
But if I'm walking through with a K2, but
Yep.
the
And
full
just on
scale.
that note, I want to shout out to Nancy because she sent me a PDF copy of this booklet. I mean, it's not a big booklet or anything. She sent me a PDF copy that I could use for the research, and it's normally sold in the gift shop for like $7. So I
Okay.
want to do something to give back to them because
Oh, yeah.
it's something we want them to continue. So
Absolutely. That's fantastic. And again, the documentation of all of this, and we were at Fort Mifflin a couple weeks ago, and there's a booklet available there at the gift shop of the haunts. That kind of stuff. It is anecdotal. And therefore, but I tend to want to have that thing, versus the whisper down the lane stories. At least someone took the time to document it, and it makes it be more factual.
mhm.
And I have nothing against stories. I love a good ghost story, but it's one of those things where if it's documented, at least it probably holds some more truth. It's been proofed a bit more or verified a bit more.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's a comment here from Jerry as well. Isn't poltergeist or can be done by someone besides spirit? I think we were talking about moving things or things moving. Okay. I'm not sure what you're saying there, Jerry, so I'm going to let that go, but there could be something else at play here as well. You're right. Bert? Yeah, there's some goodness in doing residentials, especially, I haven't done too many. We haven't done too many as a team, a couple through the years. And, one of them stands out where a family just wasn't getting any rest. And there were odd occurrences happening at their place. And, a couple of things that we did that really weren't about the paranormal. One of them was really simple. And in their bedroom, their headboard was close to a closet, or inside the closet, or basically right at their heads was their electrical box. And it was kicking high EMF, just on readings. And, obviously, I think we all know that EMF can affect a lot of things, social emotionally. But, the easy answer was, could you move your bed over here and put what was over here over there? And, and then report back from them after a week or two, they had done so and they had already started to feel better and had less instances. So, EMF does a lot of stuff. And we can't see it. It's kind of like radon in our basement,
Right.
You don't want to have it around us too long because exposure can be detrimental to our health.
Right. And EMF shows up in all sorts of places. One of the Wildwood Sanatorium where I went last summer, in the upstairs hallway where they see a lot of activity, there's a huge EMF spike in the middle of the hallway that runs almost the whole length of the hallway. Like there's probably wiring underneath.
Yeah.
I don't know if that is causing people to see things because of that high EMF, or if it's feeding something that's energy to manifest.
Right.
It could go either way. We never will know. But anyway.
I have to give a shout out to Amanda for this one. You're absolutely right, my friend. Keep it in your pocket.
Yep.
And Heather, I've passed by while there was a wedding going on at the property in one evening, and with the lights up and everything, and it was a gorgeous night. I can only imagine what the rest of the property would be like out in the barn and all. And I'm curious, why don't you remember much of this day? Why? Why maybe? Maybe.
Maybe. And now that the barn has been the art museum for 4 years now, so it'd be interesting to see with the collections in there too, what might be going on in the barn. I've seen some pictures. Ticket gets you in both places, so I definitely want to go explore. So I think the house is guided tours, but the museum obviously would be tour at your own pace.
Okay.
So
sounds like a perfect time to pull out a K2 then.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe a recorder. Okay. Well, yeah, what do you think? I mean, you've done the homework here. You're the knowledge expert. So
again, it's all anecdotal, but so many people have had experiences for so long there. There's I didn't get to dig into it too much, but there's a 1939 newspaper article about the mansion. So obviously that would have something to do with when there were tenant farmers there. So obviously these stories were going for years, and the fact that that one room had never been touched just amazes me. I mean, literally it is the same paint that has just faded over the years, and like no wallpaper, no layers of paint over top of it. It was just like something was protecting that room. Um, the other story about that room, and it's been proven because of testing and things like that, but there was a dark stain on the floor of the room. That's, for a while people thought maybe it had been blood that had been spilled, but I think they have proven after during one of the renovations they took a sample and it was boot black. So,
Wow.
which would have been used, that, and again, something easy to spill and leave a permanent stain, because the story was, oh, you can never clean this stain up. It would always keep coming back. That's how those stories go. We all know those. We've seen them. But
that's everywhere, right?
Yep. So, I mean, I think there's something there that with all that history, it's right on the river, so you've got the energy of water flowing through it. You've got it's just steeped in history. I think it's amazing, and I'm glad. I mean, it's one of those things that I'm glad that it was tenant farmers, because they didn't own the building, so they couldn't make changes to it.
Right.
And that's how we've kept it the way it was. I believe I read that it is one of the only remaining fully intact Georgian architecture models that we have in the United States.
Wow.
So it has definitely become a key piece of history.
That's really cool too. And again, it's just sitting back there. It's not on the beaten path of the park,
right?
But it's one of the access roads. It is. Thank you, man. It is a time capsule. And without preservation, any of properties, all of our aged properties around here, without renovations and care and some intentional love, they're all going to slide away from us at some point. And how the preservation of our history is so much of a key thing, for the generations to come, to understand who we were, what we were, and they don't build houses like this, obviously, because it's one of the only ones left. But even of that era, homes of this age aren't around much anymore. Too much progress happening to get them out of the way and put something newer in.
Yep. I mean, I love how this was built with this lower level. The picture on the lower left there, that lower level is where the kitchen level would have been. You walked in from the back side of the building into the kitchen, and then from the front of the house, you would have been walking into like the sitting room and the parlors and things like that.
Been a foyer of some kind.
So, yeah, it's a gorgeous piece of architecture.
Okay. Good work, sir.
Thank you. Let's see. Again, I want to give them a shout out. I'm gonna throw their website up. They are open for the season. I believe they're open Tuesdays through Sunday. They have tours multiple times a day throughout the week. They have special events. Keep an eye out for those. Definitely, support them if you can. I know I'm going to be making a visit there. It sounds like you might be making a visit there. And definitely want to go during their haunted history tours. So,
absolutely.
But yeah, it's a gorgeous property.
That's a really good shot there. It's a big house too. I mean, that's something else that we don't build them like this anymore.
No.
And obviously, I come from a line of Southern Virginia farmers. My grandparents' side and my generation, and my grandmother was one of like 13 kids. Because hands were needed, and more, again, many hands light work. but we don't build homes like this anymore because our average family size is reduced to like 1.2 children. There's some statistic. There is a real statistic,
Right.
and it's a percentage of a person,
Yeah.
because of the average. There are no 0.2 kids out there. But it's we don't need these homes anymore, and that's
Right.
that's a whole nother discussion about housing stock and other things and affordable housing right now. But the concept that if you were to build this today, the money it would cost is
Oh, it's
prohibitive as
right.
well, and then it's an unnecessary size
Mm-hmm.
as a single family dwelling. Oh, well, there you go. Let us know when you're coming.
So, Amanda had made another comment about her interpretation of what Jerry had said. I think I understand what she's saying here.
Oh yeah, that makes sense. Okay, I got you now. Yeah, thank you. Good point.
Well, it's a good thing that Bert and Heather are going to go together. So, I think is what that.
Well, based on Heather's last time there, Bert might need to drive. Oh, you guys, I'm just kidding.
So,
well, all right. What else do we have, sir? Look at that.
You want to go through this, Jamie?
Yeah, I can take it.
All right.
So the next here's our schedule for Jott-Nyx Paranormal. Coming up, we have the April 13th event at Booby's Brewery. It looks like we're down to one ticket left. That might be adjustable if someone comes to the door that night. But, if there's a party of two kind of thing, I'm sure we can make that work. But it's really getting down to the wire for
I would say grab that one.
Yeah.
Grab that one so you have a spot. Yep.
And then coming up shortly after that, what's not on the Jott-Nyx schedule is something Chad and I are doing in a small group is on the 4th of May on Star Wars Day. May the 4th be with you. We will be over at White Hill Mansion in New Jersey for an evening of investigation there. Then we're back in Jersey. We might actually be back at White Hill that afternoon, early afternoon, for the Paracon that's there at White Hill. But we're definitely going to be at the Red Mill having a paranormal investigation at a campfire. Daryl Marston from the Ghost Hunters and a few new projects that he has going will be joining us, along with Ron Iacovetti and Lourdes Gonzalez with the Satacom project, and maybe a few other surprises along the way. So that's there are still tickets available there, but they are starting to go as well. I would not wait on that either. It's about a month out, so we're gonna certainly get to a point where we're gonna have to make a cutoff. And then a couple public events coming up at the brewery again, May 18th, June 1st, and June 29th. Tickets are available for all of those events. And you can find those at the Booby's Brewery website and on our Facebook page. After that, I jumped and you jumped, apparently. So a couple shows we've got coming up. I think we've said this enough to know, but I am not going to be here next week. So we are bringing in our good friend Steve Dills to make this program much better than it would be if I were here. So Steve, we love you, and really grateful for you filling in and covering the Hanover Tavern, which is a very near and dear piece for him, and an outstanding property and location as well. And then he's bringing an investigator of his team along as well.
I mean, he just sent me a message a little bit ago. He's really excited, and he said Chris is a weirdo, so he's going to fit right in.
Yes. Perfect. All right. Well, I might not have a chair when I come back then. Oh, great. All of a sudden, my login doesn't work. All right. I'll understand. I will. I'm sure it's cool. But if I'm allowed back, April 16th.
Yeah, you have to be, because you got to do the 16th.
Well, I'm saying if I'm allowed back, because Steve could probably do like 17 episodes in a row, about just going down to Hanover in the area. So, and all the cool things he's done. I'm going to do an episode. I'm going to Disney. Okay, let's just say it out loud. I'm going to Disney World in Florida. So I'm going to do an episode on my favorite thing there, which is the Haunted Mansion, which I've loved since I've been 5 years old. My first trip there. So but there's some actual history and some interesting things about it that I think will be a fun episode to put together. So bear with me on this one. It's a pet project for me. So I hope to do justice for it.
Okay.
And then coming up right after that, our home, our home investigative site is Booby's Brewery in Mount Joy, PA. So we're going to dig into that. Chad's going to cover this episode. Hopefully have a surprise or two in there as well. And then another local location after that on April 30th on the west bank of the Susquehanna, right across the river from us in Wrightsville, PA, is a place called the Accomack Inn that's got been a restaurant, been a lot of things through the years, but it also has some tragedy and some alleged hauntings about it. So we'll cover that on the 30th. And there's more to come, but our schedule's not really set yet, so we'll get there as we go. A couple weeks out.
But I do want to put out there that we're actually doing a series of local things coming up here. Where I'm trying to hit the Fulton Opera House. You're looking at the Halderman Mansion, Hotel Hershey.
Yep.
So it's nice to focus on our hometown area for a little bit. So
yeah, and another one that's not on the list is Wheatland, which is right here in Lancaster as well. So a couple things.
So yeah,
home games. We like home games. Come visit us. We have things that are cool here.
So, well, does anybody else have any comments out there for us?
Nope. The date. Hold on. I see an invitation. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I will bring the Watergate salad from back in the day. Remember that, Chad? Every cookout had it.
It did.
It's gone away. What's going on with it?
It may be okay to leave it away, Jamie.
Maybe that's a good point. I guess you're right. You probably went away for a reason.
Oh.
I did. We got to stop clicking the same things. We think we know what we're doing by now, right? The year in. There's one more here from Amanda. Cool. Thank you, dear. It's good to see you again. Hope to catch you soon.
So, all right. Well, then, if there's nothing else, we always have our where you can find us. If you found us here, but where else can you look for us? So,
yep, we have Facebook, of course. A lot of you are here on Facebook tonight. A few on the YouTube, as my dad calls it. He just found this recently, the YouTube. I didn't even know he had a computer. Seriously. Of course, TikTok and Instagram are the other awesome socials that we're part of. So give us a like, give us a follow, and we'll get you some content as we go along. And you'll always be in the loop on where Jott-Nyx Paranormal is and what we're up to. Of course, episodes coming up here. So.
Yep. So, well, my friend, have a great trip.
Thank you. Thank you.
You know, we're here if you want to pop in, but obviously, if you're watching fireworks, don't.
It's around that time, so we'll see. I have good intentions and probably bad execution, so just warning you ahead of time. It's not personal, I promise. I really am. I'm going to watch the episode. Don't worry. I'm really excited for Steve, and I wish I could be here for this. Him being with us. He's so fun and dynamic.
Well, it is Steve. So when you go to watch it, like block 2 hours because you know how that goes.
I might be out. The fireworks will be long over by the time he's done anyway. So yeah, that's a good point.
So I have to make sure that I hit the bathroom before I jump into the show because that and have a snack and maybe a pillow. Get your favorite blankie. Maybe make some popcorn. I don't know. He's a great storyteller. So, okay. I'm going to stop there. So, you haven't met Steve yet, have you?
Not in person. Not in person at all. I mean, I feel like I know him well from our last episode with him, but I have not had the pleasure of getting down his way, nor having contact with him at any of the events that the public.
Well, I know he's going to be at a couple events up here this summer, so maybe we'll have to plan a.
I saw some of that, and I'm got to plan ahead enough to make it. But yes, that's a good point and a good plan as well.
All right. Well. If that is it, we should sign off. And you probably have packing to do.
Well, I've got kids to wrangle. I don't know if you all noticed this a little while ago when Chad was in the middle of his stuff. I was trying to shush. The one of the two teens is here, and the other is out looking for shorts apparently, because we need those in Florida. Because our northern bodies are not used to 80 degrees. Excuse me. And the dog got sick, which I got a text, and I was trying to
Uh-huh.
do this on the side, and
Uh-huh.
like, just don't step in, and I'll deal with it. And then there comes a kid with 3 bottles of cleaning products. Um, like, which one should I use? I wasn't going to dissuade that, like, never stop that from happening. But
Uh-huh.
I'm also like trying to, because I'm waiting for you to call a slide at that point. As soon as I look away, you're like, next slide, next slide.
Uh-huh.
Dang it. So
That's how it
I think
always
we got
goes.
I think we got it figured out, though. So
Well, that's good.
multitasking. That's what I was
Mhm.
doing.
So,
Day in the life.
yep.
All
So,
right.
well,
Hey, there's
Justin,
there's our good friend Justin.
I
Hey,
was gonna say,
buddy.
he
Good
just
evening.
jumped.
Now that we're leaving, it's good to see you. It's not
So,
personal, I swear.
so, well,
All right. Oh, thank you so much
Jamie.
for watching. We cannot do this without you. We really appreciate you, and thanks for all the comments. It was super cool to have everybody here tonight and see some faces we haven't seen in a while. Look forward to seeing you. Well, they look forward to seeing you next week.
Uh-huh.
I'll catch up with you in 2 weeks.
You'll be here in spirit, right, Jamie?
See, I like how you did that. I like how
Uh-huh.
you did that.
Uh-huh.
Yes, I will.
So,
Yes,
all
I
right.
will.
Good night,
All
everybody.
right,
Thanks again.
take care.